Beneath the sidewalks of one of Washington, D.C.'s most prestigious parks lies a secret domain. Dark, shuttered, abandoned, and almost forgotten. A trolley station underneath Dupont Circle. Architect Julian Hunt came across the site about 10 years ago.
As an architect, I pay attention to what I'm looking at when I'm walking around the city. And I remember seeing these old boarded up staircases and wondering what was down there. And the kind of local lore was they were just ventilation shafts. But I knew differently, and I just kept asking questions, and finally found the kind of right person to talk to at the facilities management in the city. We got a tour. We had a police escort because there were homeless people living down here. And I was surprised by how big it was, and just an enormous hidden asset. We went back to the city with a proposal. We said we'd like to open this up and create a cultural destination.
The space had been a trolley station back in the 1950s.
Dupont Circle had very, very terrible traffic problems, especially after they installed the streetcar system on the surface. So that was roughly about 1920 when they began to consider putting the streetcar under the circle. So all the planning was delayed until after the Second World War. They finally built it out right after the war, opened it in 1949, and by that time already the car was coming into its own, and by 1962 the whole thing shut down.
Closed in the 1960s, it's been vacant for more than 50 years, for the most part.
They had all kinds of proposals and couldn't quite ever figure out what to do with it. In 1995, 94, they tried a food court. A small developer, local developer, actually got a permit to do it, tried to build it out, was undercapitalized, basically did not have enough money to do it right. Tried to put 5, 6 small restaurants down here, and it failed very, very quickly.
Julian's mission is to merge old infrastructure with innovative adaptation.
The coolest thing is that there's nothing like it in the city. Physically speaking, both because it's subterranean, there are very few underground spaces like this in the city, and also aesthetically, this kind of very concrete industrial aspect.
Braulio Agnesi works with Julian Hunt. He's the managing director of the Arts Coalition for the DuPont Underground.
DuPont is one of the city's most iconic neighborhoods. It's one of the few neighborhoods that people outside DC are likely to have heard of. It has a sort of cultural cachet and history. It's part of the old city. As parks go, it's probably the best loved, best used park in the city, apart from the mall. There are a number of these circle parks, but most of them don't have the kind of activity that Dupont Circle sees on a regular basis.
So what do their plans for this subterranean space entail?
Right now we have a 5-year lease with the city, and we'll be activating about 1/3 of the 75,000 square feet, cleaning it up and turning it into a mixed-use venue where we will try a lot of different things. Arts and cultural things like exhibits and events, public performances, music, dance, theater, all in an effort to understand the space. We're calling the next 5 years our proof of concept phase.
They've drawn inspiration from similar urban development projects in other countries.
In London for several years, the Old Vic Theatre had access to and kind of ran some tunnel space from the subway system for several years, and it was very successful. So that's a good precedent we look at. In Dusseldorf, there's a former highway space that was underground that's been cut off and turned into a really high-end art gallery. Last year in Paris, one of the candidates for mayor, part of her platform was actually taking 7 old metro stations that are not currently being used and reprogramming them with things like a lap pool or a club or a theater space. These kinds of discussions are happening all over the world because as cities densify, there's only so far they can go up or so far they can go out.
Julian Hunt believes that public space is critical to communication, interaction, and a fluid social life.
One of our supporters, he said, for my business in the high-tech world, I love being right on the circle because that's the place where I bump into people accidentally and I can say, hey, I got an idea, let's set up a deal. The accidental encounter, the opportunity to meet people from different places and different backgrounds is what makes culture alive.
Whatever happens, it's a destination that could add a new dimension to DC and modernize Washington's image as a global city.